Okay, we're going to start with this question, which is a little bit different than some of the others. Usually we're given words and we have to solve, and this time they gave us a graph. It wants to know which is a reasonable estimate of overtime, or of hourly pay for Joanna and Richard. Well, we don't know. All we know is that on day 1, they made this much money, and on day 2, they made this much money, and on day 3, they made this much money. On day 4, they made this much money. Well, what I'm going to do is, when we talk about hourly pay, oh, there's a note down here that tells us that this is the number of 8-hour work days. So we know that each of these, each time we come here, this is 8 hours of work, okay? And this is another 8 hours of work, okay? Each section is 8 hours. So I'm going to find a place where I can easily see where it crosses. So about here for Richard, notice it crosses right through an intersection. So for 3 days of work, he makes $200. Well, how many hours would that be? Well, if this is 8 hours, and this is 8 hours, and this is 8 hours, 8 times 3 is 24 hours. So I know that for Richard, okay, his rate, whatever that might be, times 24 hours of work is about $200. And then I can use my algebra skills to solve this. Again, its rate is what I want, but right now it's multiplied by 24 hours. So I do the opposite and divide both sides by 24 to solve. And for Richard, I find his rate is 200 divided by 24, which is about $8.33 per hour. Okay, so that's for Richard. Now let's take a look at Joanna. Joanna is the blue line. So again, I want to find a place where it crosses right through one of these intersections, because then it's easy for me to tell what the actual pay was. And her first place that it kind of crosses one of these intersections is right here at the edge of the graph, actually. And we can see that after 4 days, she has made $350. So how many hours is 4 days? Well, 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours. 4 days at 8 hours apiece is 32 hours. Okay, so when we talk about Joanna, we know that her rate, whatever that might be, times 32 hours is this pay. For 32 hours, she was paid $350. And we can solve this. Again, we want the rate. It's multiplied by 32. So to solve, we do the opposite of multiplying, which is to divide by 32. And that will help us find her rate. So her rate is 350 divided by 32, which is $10.94. Okay, so this graph allowed us to estimate what the hourly pay might be for Joanna and for Richard. Okay, so here we are talking about Denise Cho. She's a broadcast technician and earns $16 an hour with time and a half overtime. Last week she worked 40 hours at regular pay and some overtime hours. Her total pay for the week was $746.32. How many overtime hours did Denise work? Wow. Okay, well, how are we supposed to know? Well, let's take a look at what we do know. Okay, we know that her total pay, okay, how do we find total pay when someone has overtime hours? Well, it's the regular pay plus the overtime pay. All right. Right now, all we really know is that 40 hours is a regular work week, and her regular pay is $16 an hour, and total she made $746.32. So I do know this amount. Okay, do I know regular pay? Well, they didn't give it to me, but I know she had to work 40 regular hours at $16 an hour, so I can go find her regular pay. I'm just going to go over here on the side, and her regular pay is the pay rate, which was $16 an hour, times the number of hours, which was 40. We know 40 hours is regular, and then anything over that is overtime. So we know if she got to overtime, she had to have worked those 40 hours of regular pay. Okay, 16 times 40 is $640. So now I know her regular pay, and I can come put that in. I know she made $640 in regular pay. I don't know her overtime pay, which I'm going to write as OT pay just to save myself some writing. Okay, so now what? Well, we can find out how much the overtime pay was. We don't know how many hours yet, but we can figure that out in a minute. So I know that the overtime pay has 640 added to it. So to solve, we do the opposite of that, which is to subtract. So really we're taking her total pay, and we're taking out of that the regular pay so that we know how much was just overtime. Okay, so when we do that, we get $106.32. All right, so that's her overtime pay. Well, how are we going to use that to find out her number of overtime hours? All right, well, we know that overtime pay is overtime rate times overtime hours, which is what we want to know. And we just found out that that total overtime pay is $106.32. Do we know the overtime rate? Well, they didn't tell us what it was, but we do know that it's time and a half of 16. So let's find our overtime rate. So again, I'm going to go over here somewhere on the side. Okay, overtime rate is going to be time and a half, so 1.5 times the regular pay, which was $16. Okay, so her overtime rate is $24 an hour. Now that I know her overtime rate, I can bring it up here, and I know that 24 times however many overtime hours she had gave her that overtime pay of $106.32. Okay, so now to solve this, I take my 24, it was time, so I'm going to do the opposite and divide both sides by 24. That is a 24 right there. And that will tell me the number of overtime hours that it took to get that $106.32 in pay. So I take 106.32 divided by 24, and I get $4.43 hours. Shows she had 4.4 overtime hours. So that was a lot of steps, but if you come to a question, each time you think about what do I know and what do I need to know, and if you have those formulas written down, it also helps quite a bit.